Bonsai is a Japanese word that means plant in a pot. Growing trees in pots is a revered art that actually began in China more than 2,000 years ago. During the past century, creating artificial trees known as bonsai zoke has evolved into a hobby with global appeal. Whether it's rustic pine, flowering cherry, or Chinese elm, bonsai zoke can be made to resemble a variety of trees. Some include stones and small statues, a Chinese tradition known as penjing. A craftsman starts by wrapping 13 strands of wire with stretchy, sticky tape used by florists. He uses 13, partly out of respect for a traditional Asian preference for odd numbers. Later, these wires will form parts of the trunk and branches. He wraps the wires with strips of paper towel for thickness and flexibility. To hold the paper towel in place, he wraps the ends of the wires with more floral tape. He then separates clumps of plastic pine needles from their branches. Ironically, this fake vegetation is imported from China. Next, he snips off the ends of the branches, creating segments about 2.5 centimeters long. To reinforce and support these segments, he wraps them with tiny wire that's 0.5 millimeter in diameter. Next, he wraps the segments with floral tape to give them a more natural, branch-like appearance. Then he inserts these segments into the pine needle clumps. The thicker end becomes the bud and holds the clump on the segment. The craftsman now places 3 of these leafy segments together and attaches them with wire. He bends them sideways in the same direction. This mimics the tendency of natural branches to lean towards the sun. For more mature-looking buds, he uses different 3-headed artificial segments. For integrity, 2 different types of buds are never used on the same tree. To add character, the craftsman uses a piece of weathered driftwood as the base of the trunk. He anchors the long wrapped wires into styrofoam around the bottom of the base. He staples the wires to the driftwood and wraps floral tape around the wires surrounding the base. Then he twists the wire to form a sinuous shape, what the Japanese call moyogi. He covers the trunk with soft gray modeling clay, adhering closely to the shape of the driftwood underneath. This will later be covered by artificial bark and moss. This process can take several hours, just part of the 4 to 6 days it takes one worker to make a bonsai zoke. The craftsman then applies slow-drying glue to one side of strips of rice paper. The strips are 5 centimeters long and 2.5 centimeters wide. He uses about 50 to cover the trunk, like bark on a tree. He dabs them with a wet rag so that the creases will remain when the glue dries. The creases make the bark look realistically aged, one of the hallmarks of a good bonsai zoke. Craftsmen are careful to place the branches in the traditional triangle shape. The lower branches must droop, as if weighed down by the elements. They add the leafy segments to the ends of the wire branches, attaching them with wire and floral tape. Using a knife, the craftsman trims away the excess styrofoam around the tree trunk. He then places the tree into an argile pot that's 22 centimeters in diameter and 5 centimeters high. Using a sculpting tool, he covers the styrofoam in the pot with brown modeling clay. Using slow-drying glue, he covers the clay in several shades of fake moss. They range in color from dark brown to light green. He doesn't let the glue dry between each layer because the blending of moss and glue ensures a more natural-looking ground cover. He gently blows on the moss to scatter it across the base. He also applies glue further up the trunk, adhering moss that's thicker and lighter in color to resemble lichen. The finished bonsai zoke is 45 centimeters high. It needs none of the constant care required by its natural twin. Depending on their size and complexity, artificial bonsais range in price from $50 to $800.